Like I was just like I'm like cause I just got back from arraignment, and I'm like, all I heard was murder, and I'm just like,
damn,
like that was that.
Before all the headlines, before the snitch jokes flooded the internet, and before he became a walking meme, there was just one thing 6ix9ine had to face completely alone: jail. No flashy cars, no crew, no music, no fame, just silence and steel bars. In this clip, he opens up about those first brutal nights behind bars and how it flipped his whole mindset upside down. It all started on November 18th, 2018, when federal agents stormed in and arrested Daniel Hernandez, better known as 6ix9ine, alongside several members of the 9 Trey Gangster Bloods. Among them was his former manager, Kefano Shotty Jordan, one of the key figures in his crew. The charges? Racketeering, conspiracy, firearm offenses, drug distribution, and even conspiracy to commit murder. This wasn't small-time trouble. Prosecutors said 6ix9ine funded gang operations while using their reputation for protection. They tied him to multiple violent incidents, including a shooting at the Barclays Center, an armed robbery near Times Square, and even alleged orders to take out rivals. The stakes were insane. 6ix9ine was staring down a possible life sentence, with a minimum of 47 years locked away. That arrest went down at exactly 6 in the evening, and the timing wasn't random. FBI wiretaps had caught his own crew plotting to super violate him after he publicly fired everyone on Instagram. In gang terms, that meant serious revenge, possibly even death. The same people he once trusted were now turning against him, and the feds knew his life was hanging by a thread. The next day, November 19th, 2018, he faced the court for arraignment. Bail? Denied. Even with over $1 million in his passport on the table, the judge wasn't buying it. Prosecutors had receipts, straight from his own social media, where he flaunted gang ties and glorified violence. Still, his lawyer, Lance Lazaro, pushed back hard, saying the charges were overblown and based on hearsay. He argued that 6ix9ine wasn't a true gang member at all, just a performer using that wild image to sell records. Then came the move that shocked everybody. Instead of being hidden away for his safety, Daniel Hernandez, 6ix9ine, was thrown straight into general population at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This place isn't just any lockup. It's one of the roughest federal facilities in the country, known for chaos, overcrowding, and pure violence. The Justice Department itself has called it a home for extremely dangerous, violent, or escape-prone inmates. It's got mold on the walls, broken systems, and guards constantly stretched too thin to control the madness. What made this move so wild was that federal agents had literally placed him under protective custody just before the arrest, saying his life was in danger. His lawyer, Lance Lazaro, couldn't believe it. He questioned how someone facing real death threats could be tossed into a prison like that. With 6ix9ine's celebrity status and messy gang ties, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Inside the MDC, life hit hard. 23 to 24-hour lockdowns, rotting conditions, zero privacy, and noise so loud it messed with your head. Prison consultant Sam Mangle even called the place incredibly dangerous, with some judges refusing to send inmates there because it's just that bad. Almost immediately, tension started brewing. Reports say 6ix9ine clashed with other prisoners, including members of the Crips, bitter rivals of the Bloods. The threats weren't empty talk. They were real, close, and deadly serious. Everyone wanted to test him, to see if he was really about that life or just an image from the internet. But what 6ix9ine went through that very first night, it wasn't what anyone expected. Years later, he'd finally open up in an interview, revealing exactly what happened inside those cold walls that first night behind bars.
I got locked up at 6 o'clock, right? Rachel, I got locked up at 6 o'clock. That night, I watched the movie on like a Fed phone. Like they gave me like an iPad or whatever, and they said just lay on the rug like and watch a movie. I watched Lone Survivor.
The difference between what people thought happened that first night and what actually went down was shocking. While headlines screamed about death threats and violent inmates waiting to jump him, 6ix9ine was just sitting in his cell, watching a war movie on an iPad. The same guy the world pictured trembling in fear was chilling, trying to make sense of the chaos around him. That weird mix of calm and dark humor said a lot about how 6ix9ine handled pressure. He wasn't frozen in fear, he was already plotting his next move. Even locked up, his mind was running non-stop, thinking strategy instead of panic. But that small moment of calm didn't last long. The very next day, reality hit him hard at his arraignment, as the judge read out every single charge, one after another.
Last night, I was just like, I'm trying to think about how that night went. No, that night, I was like, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not, because I just got back from arraignment, and I'm like, all I heard was murder, and I'm just like,
damn,
like that was that.
The moment those charges echoed through the courtroom, it all hit him like a ton of bricks. Murder, conspiracy to murder, racketeering, firearms. These weren't just charges, they were life enders. Every word carried decades of prison time. Every count a reminder that this wasn't music videos or internet drama anymore. This was real life. But right then, something changed inside 6ix9ine. Instead of breaking down, his mindset flipped fast. Fear turned into focus. Panic turned into planning. He started thinking not about if he'd survive this, but how he'd take control of the situation.
It was just like, after that, it was just like, all right, get through this.
His lawyer made something crystal clear. 6ix9ine never asked for protective custody himself. While the world assumed he was begging for safety, his real focus was on keeping his family safe in the middle of all that chaos. That detail changed everything. It showed he wasn't hiding or scared for his own life. He was worried about the people he loved most. The truth was, those threats didn't start in jail. They've been brewing for weeks, ever since October 2018, when 6ix9ine tried to break away from the 9 Trey crew. Just after a plea violation hearing, where he managed to dodge jail time, a supposed celebration dinner exploded into a shootout between Shotty's crew and his label's team. Things were spinning out of control fast. FBI wiretaps later caught gang leaders like Mel Murda and Shotty plotting revenge, saying things like, "He don't got nothing to lose no more." That was basically a green light for chaos. Even when the FBI offered him protection, Hernandez said no. But the situation got so wild that the feds had to step in anyway, arresting him partly for his own safety. Once locked up, the danger didn't disappear, it multiplied. Being labeled a snitch or even suspected of flipping could make him a target instantly, especially around gang-affiliated inmates. People close to him, like Trife, Drew, and Wizard, admitted they were terrified after he fired his crew, even going into hiding themselves. But when 6ix9ine later talked about those early days behind bars, his version wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of fear or regret, he described something totally different, a mindset that caught everyone off guard.
No, they were all like older, like 60, 50.
So
no, I was in a jail full of rats. Everybody was snitches. Like the jail I was in, everybody snitched. It was like a rat jail.
That revelation flipped the whole story on its head. The so-called dangerous general population he was placed in, it wasn't what the media made it out to be. Turns out, that unit was packed mostly with cooperators, informants, and older inmates, not the violent gang members everyone imagined. The threat level was way lower than the headlines suggested, almost like a quiet corner in a storm. Then on November 26, 2018, things shifted again. After his bail was denied and reports came in about tension and possible fights inside MDC, 6ix9ine was quietly moved out. He was transferred from Brooklyn's brutal Metropolitan Detention Center to a private facility in Queens, a move made purely for safety reasons. And get this, it wasn't his idea at all. Federal officials decided he was too high profile, too risky to keep in the mix. But the setup in Queens, totally different from what people imagined. Instead of chaos and constant threats, 6ix9ine described something far calmer, a strange kind of peace. He wasn't fighting for his life or watching his back every second. Instead, he spent hours on the phone talking to his girlfriend, trying to hold on to some tiny piece of normal life in a world that felt completely upside down. Even the protective custody layout looked and felt different, less like a war zone, more like isolation with walls that whispered secrets instead of screams.
To be honest, I thought like it was gonna be a shower, and everybody showered, but when I first got to jail, I was in
rat jail.
I was in a rat jail, but it was protective custody jail, like protective custody unit. Like it was on like older guys in my pod, and then like the jails were like covered off, like it was privacy.
This new setup was a whole different world. He had individual showers, real privacy, and was surrounded mostly by older inmates who were also working with the authorities, people trying to survive the system just like him. This wasn't the same brutal MDC that once held names like R. Kelly and Ghislaine Maxwell under harsh, punishing conditions. Instead, it was a special segregated unit built for one reason: to keep high-risk cooperators alive. No chaos, no constant brawls, just quiet tension and the sound of doors locking tight. And surprisingly, 6ix9ine even had access to the commissary. That little privilege meant a lot. A few snacks, some comfort, and a rare reminder that he was still human in a place built to break people down.
Like you buy your own soap from commissary, and it's like you set your pin, it's like a machine.
Right.
And then I would just call my business manager and I'm like, yo,
wire 100 grand.
No, it was like $100 every day because I didn't trust.
6ix9ine kept things tight even inside. He didn't blow through his money or flex like he used to. Instead, he deposited small amounts every day, keeping strict control over his own cash. In a place where trust was rare and everyone watched each other's moves, that kind of discipline meant power. He wasn't letting anyone play him or touch what was his. And then came the biggest surprise: the food. After hearing horror stories about prison meals, what he actually got was nothing like the nightmare people imagined. It wasn't luxury, but it was better than anyone expected behind those walls.
Do they even have like mofongo and all that?
No,
there?
no, they have like it's pretty good though. Like
Burritos.
seasoned food. Like
Bro,
they-
this.
Yo, how do I get locked up?
The interviewer couldn't help but react. The way 6ix9ine described his stay sounded almost comfortable compared to the nightmare stories people usually hear about federal lockups. It was wild to imagine that someone facing life could talk about jail like that. But that comfort came with a catch. 6ix9ine made it clear. His experience wasn't normal at all. He was a cooperator, and that meant the feds had every reason to keep him alive, healthy, and ready to testify. The setup he got wasn't privilege. It was protection, plain and simple. His unit was nothing like the rest of MDC, and the difference was massive. When the interviewer brought up Jeffrey Epstein, 6ix9ine immediately pointed out the gap between the two places. Epstein was held at the Manhattan Correctional Center, the federal version of Rikers Island, overcrowded, dangerous, and falling apart. Meanwhile, 6ix9ine's spot was a protective unit meant to keep people breathing long enough to testify. He knew the system inside out, even from behind bars. That awareness showed how sharp he really was. He understood exactly where he stood, why he was there, and how easily it could have been worse. In the end, his time in protective custody stayed calm. No fights, no attacks, no wild incidents. He served his time, completed community service, and paid over $236,000 in restitution. In later interviews, 6ix9ine kept circling back to the same message about that time in his life. After his early 2019 release, sped up because of his cooperation and the added COVID-19 risks tied to his asthma, he opened up to outlets like Vlad TV and Billboard about what really went down. He downplayed the chaos everyone imagined from 2018, saying there were no confrontations at all, even with his snitch label hanging over him. In a 2020 Billboard interview, he said jail made him fearless. He called it a life lesson, something that hardened him instead of breaking him. He also came at the rap game hard, calling out the double standards around snitching. He mentioned names like 21 Savage, Gunna, and T.I., saying people pick and choose who to judge based on convenience. The truth was that protective custody setup wasn't random. It was a calculated move by federal authorities. They needed 6ix9ine alive and in one piece to testify against the 9 Trey gangsta bloods. His testimony helped lock up several members, including his former manager, Shotty. His safety wasn't about favoritism, it was strategy. But that setup revealed a lot about how the feds treat high-profile cooperators. They isolate them, protect them, and give them just enough comfort to keep them talking. The nightmare scenes from general population didn't apply to him at all. What really set 6ix9ine apart, though, was his mindset. Through it all, he said he moved with faith, not fear. After his release, 6ix9ine spoke about his time behind bars with pure defiance and surprising optimism. He said there were no confrontations despite carrying the snitch label, something that destroys most reputations in hip-hop. He credited his calm mindset to faith, saying, "When you walk with the Almighty, you walk confidently, no fear." To him, jail wasn't a nightmare. It was a test of faith, a challenge meant to strengthen him. That spiritual take flipped the script completely. In a culture where cooperating with law enforcement is seen as the ultimate betrayal, he found a way to rise above the shame. Informants usually get isolated, threatened, even targeted, and 6ix9ine faced all that heat head on. But instead of bowing to it, he owned his choices. He didn't hide or apologize. He made it clear that protecting his family came first, no matter what anyone said. He even admitted he'd do it all again if it meant keeping his loved ones safe. That's not the voice of someone broken by the system. That's someone standing firm on his decisions. And from the very start, his mindset showed that clarity. Remember that first night when he watched Lone Survivor? That moment stuck with him. A movie about Navy SEALs facing impossible odds in Afghanistan, forced to make a moral choice that led to their ambush. Even then, 6ix9ine was already thinking about survival and what it really meant to live with your decisions. The parallel wasn't lost on 6ix9ine. Choices always come with consequences, and survival means learning to adapt. His time in prison showed just how practical his mindset had become. He wasn't wasting energy plotting revenge or trying to hold on to old gang ties. Instead, he focused on what he could control. calling his loved ones, managing his commissary account, and keeping his mind steady through strict routines. That calmness he talked about wasn't fake confidence, it was strategy. In prison, fear is weakness, and weakness attracts danger. By moving with faith and confidence, 6ix9ine built a kind of psychological armor to match the walls around him. His lawyer's statement that he never requested protective custody fit perfectly with that image. It let him claim he wasn't scared, that the system made its own call to move him. Whether or not that was the full truth didn't matter. The story worked, and it helped him hold on to a shred of dignity in a place designed to crush it. In his Vlad TV interview, he doubled down on that idea, saying, "Never had no problems, thank God." He credited his safety to divine protection, not the feds, staying loyal to that faith narrative every time he spoke about it. But beneath all that spirituality was something sharper, a deep understanding of power. 6ix9ine knew exactly what kept him valuable to the federal prosecutors, his cooperation. As long as he stayed willing to testify, they needed him alive, and he used that fact to his full advantage. That mindset stretched far beyond his own survival. It became part of his mission to call out the double standards in hip-hop. He went straight at the so-called street code, calling out artists like 21 Savage, Gunna, and T.I., saying the culture's outrage was selective and full of hypocrisy. He pointed out that plenty of rappers had done similar things. They just got a free pass when it was convenient. This wasn't him trying to dodge blame, it was a full-on offensive move. By flipping the script and attacking the moral authority of those calling him out, 6ix9ine weakened their shots before they could land. In a 2025 Vlad TV interview, he looked back on his early arrest, saying those moments hardened him but never broke him. He didn't dwell on regret. He focused on survival. Getting arrested at 17 for drug sales taught him early how to navigate systems built to crush young men like him. Prison wasn't new. It was just the next level in a game he already knew how to play. And when he said, "I'd do it again every single time if it meant keeping my family safe," that hit like a bomb. It was his boldest stance yet, rejecting the street code that prized loyalty to the crew over everything else. For 6ix9ine, it was simple. Family and survival came first, no matter the cost. That mindset carried straight into his later years. By the time of his 2024 and now 2026 incarcerations, you could see he'd made complete peace with the cycle. When he surrendered at MDC Brooklyn on January 6, 2026, he showed up in a luxury van with streamer Aiden Ross and content creator Steve Will Do It, and they live streamed the whole thing. They were literally singing Justin Bieber's Baby as he walked in. That wasn't the move of a man traumatized by jail. That was someone who had accepted it. Confident, unbothered, and in full control, 6ix9ine even dropped a track titled First Day In with Ross and Cuff, turning his latest incarceration into content while firing shots at his rivals. His spokesperson made it clear. 6ix9ine's new focus was all about self-improvement. He was hitting the gym, eating right, and even planning new content from inside. The resilience story he built around himself wasn't just talk. It served real purposes. It helped him stay relevant in a music industry that had mostly turned its back on him, gave fans a reason to still root for him, and most importantly, helped him protect his mental state by turning his trauma into a story of strength. But buried inside that narrative was real truth. The man had survived multiple stints behind bars without serious harm, testified against dangerous gang members, and walked out alive. He broke every so-called street rule. And yet, he stayed visible, loud, and unapologetic. No matter what people said, he'd proven one thing. He could survive consequences that would break almost anyone else. Then came the deeper reality, the difference between perceived danger and what actually happened. In 6ix9ine's case, that gap revealed a lot about both the prison system and the way media talks about high-profile inmates. The threats were 100% real. They weren't exaggerated for headlines. FBI wiretaps caught his former allies plotting to super violate him after he cut ties with the crew and fired everyone on social media. That fallout was messy and dangerous, forcing federal agents to move fast. They warned him about the threats and even accelerated his arrest to stop something worse from happening. In court, prosecutors laid out the evidence clearly. Wiretaps, messages, and conversations between gang members spelling out violent plans against him. The words they used weren't vague at all. They were straight up chilling. The intent behind those threats was clear. This wasn't something dreamed up by paranoid lawyers or blown out of proportion by the media. The danger around 6ix9ine was real and serious. Yet even with all those documented threats, no one ever actually touched him during his 2018 incarceration. The quick move to protective custody shut down any chance of confrontation. And even before that, While he spent a short time in general population, not a single person laid a hand on him. That gap between the threats and what actually happens says a lot about how prison violence really works. It's not random. It takes timing, motive, and coordination. And when the federal system decides to step in, it can stop violence cold through separation and heavy monitoring. 6ix9ine's lawyer did question why he was put in general population at all, given the known danger. But in the end, the system acted fast, moving him before anything serious could happen. Fast forward to his 2026 incarceration, and the same pattern continues. As of January 14th, 2026, there have been no reports of threats, attacks, or conflicts involving him. 8 days into a 3-month sentence at MDC Brooklyn, everything's been calm, no issues, no altercations. Because of his past cooperation with the feds, he's almost certainly being held in protective custody again, away from gang-affiliated inmates to keep things smooth. Now, MDC Brooklyn still has its rough reputation, known for violence, inmate deaths, and chaos. But so far, 6ix9ine hasn't been linked to any kind of trouble. In fact, he's been cracking jokes about it. He even joked about sharing the facility with Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and Luigi Mangione, saying he's down to dance with Maduro, play cards, or share ramen with Mangione. That humor shows just how casually he's treating his situation, like someone who's seen it all and isn't fazed anymore. No tension, no fear. That alone says a lot. The difference between 6ix9ine's time in jail and what happens to him on the outside is shocking. Back in March 2023, he was jumped at an LA Fitness in Lake Worth Beach, Florida. 3 men were arrested for the attack. Not long after, he was allegedly beaten again, this time by 2 producers in the Dominican Republic. These weren't prison fights. They were street ambushes, out in the open where no one could protect him. And that's the real irony. For all the chaos tied to his name, prison has actually been safer for 6ix9ine than freedom. The same place designed to punish him has turned into a kind of refuge. Inside, the system shields him from the violence that hunts him outside. Still, the media doesn't stop selling the danger. Every time he's locked up, the headlines explode. Death threats, violent inmates, hell on earth. Reports paint MDC Brooklyn as a war zone, predicting brutal payback for his cooperation with the feds. But the truth? Nothing close. No stabbings, no riots, no dramatic showdowns, just long, quiet stretches of time served in isolation with other cooperators. Watching movies on iPads, talking on the phone, and counting the days. That doesn't mean the threats weren't real. They were deadly serious. It just proves one thing. When the federal system wants to keep someone safe, it can. They've invested in keeping 6ix9ine alive because his testimony helped take down major gang figures. They have the tools, they have the control. They just don't use that same level of protection for everyone. The constant narrative of danger benefits everyone in different ways. For 6ix9ine, it makes him look brave and unbreakable. For his critics, it feels like karma. And for the media, it's endless clicks and hype. But strip all that away, and the truth is much simpler. His prison life has been isolation, routine, and boredom, broken only by phone calls, commissary runs, and long hours of nothingness. For 6ix9ine, incarceration hasn't been chaos. It's been paperwork, schedules, and silence. Bureaucratic, not brutal. Administrative, not anarchic. The real punishment hasn't been fists or fights. It's been isolation and social exile. His snitch reputation made people assume danger followed him everywhere. But according to him, that fear hasn't turned into real problems inside. He's been vocal about what he sees as hip-hop's biggest double standard, loyalty. He calls out the culture's hypocrisy, pointing out that plenty of rappers cooperate with law enforcement when it benefits them, but only he gets labeled for life. The gap between the threats and the lack of harm in his case shows how violence in prison isn't random. It's controlled. When the system wants to stop it, it can. And in 6ix9ine's case, celebrity cuts both ways. It makes him a target, but also shields him. He's too famous to get touched without the world finding out. His story ties into something bigger, how celebrity, the justice system, and hip-hop collide in America. MDC Brooklyn, where he served time, has seen its share of notorious inmates, from R. Kelly and Ghislaine Maxwell to, most recently, Nicolas Maduro. The place has been under constant fire for its grim reputation. Suicides, poor food, filthy conditions, and serious violence. Judges have even refused to send inmates there or cut sentences short because of it. While reports claim MDC has seen some improvements since 2024, like 87% staffing levels, over 700 maintenance repairs, reduced violence, and telehealth programs, its reputation still feels dark. For 6ix9ine, that facility is both punishment and protection, a strange mix of safety and suffering. His isolation keeps him away from the chaos of general population, but it also locks him in his own head. The quiet becomes its own kind of torture, deliberate, necessary, and heavy. 6ix9ine's cooperation with the feds may have cut his 2019 sentence down to just 2 years, part of which he'd already served. But it came with a massive price. He walked out a free man but a pariah in hip-hop. The fallout was brutal. Former collaborators cut him off, radio stations stopped spinning his tracks, and artists across the industry turned him into both a punchline and a warning. Still, through controversy and chaos, he's refused to fade away. From his live-streamed 2026 surrender to his non-stop social media presence and steady stream of new music, 6ix9ine has shown one thing: he's not going anywhere. Instead of begging for forgiveness, he's owned the villain image completely, leaning into the hate and flipping it into attention. His current 3-month sentence came from supervised release violations, including drug possession involving cocaine and MDMA, plus a mall altercation in 2025. That followed a 45-day stint in 2024 for similar behavior. The pattern paints a clear picture. Either he can't or just won't play by the system's rules. The 2025 mall fight reportedly started after taunts from bystanders, but it still broke his release terms. And his drug charges showed ongoing use, even with court-ordered treatment in place. None of these were major crimes, but they were enough to raise eyebrows for federal authorities watching his every move. If all goes smoothly, he's expected to be released with good behavior around early April 2026. After that, he'll be under another 12 months of supervised release, with mandatory anger management and drug treatment programs on deck. Whether he sticks to the rules this time is anyone's guess, but his camp is already spinning a redemption angle. His spokesperson says he's focusing on fitness, music, writing, and prepping for a major tour once he's out. He's even announced a goal to drop 70 pounds during this stint, turning another sentence into yet another headline. Details about his daily life inside are still fuzzy, but 6ix9ine continues to spin his jail time as another chance for self-improvement, perfectly matching his resilience storyline. Public reaction, though, is all over the place. Some people clown him for live streaming his surrender, calling it another attention grab, while others joke online about his possible cellmates. Social media has turned his incarceration into entertainment, and honestly, that might be exactly what he wants. His financial picture, however, tells a rougher story. After his 2020 release, he bragged about signing a $10 million deal, but later admitted he blew through a huge chunk of that money. His music career hasn't bounced back to what it once was, with streaming numbers dropping hard. Promoters and venues hesitate to book him, worried about backlash and safety risks at shows. The fame that once made him unstoppable now works against him. But 6ix9ine's story runs deeper than lost money or canceled gigs. It hits at the heart of street culture, cooperation, and survival inside the justice system. He broke one of hip-hop's sacred rules by working with authorities, yet he's still standing, still free, and still talking. By doing so, he exposed how loyalty in the game isn't as pure as people claim. He's been loud about it too, calling out artists like 21 Savage, Gunna, and T.I. for doing similar things behind the scenes but never catching the same level of hate. His argument? The difference isn't what he did. It's that he owned it publicly, while others stayed quiet. That honesty hasn't made him many friends in the industry, but it's forced people to confront a real question about hip-hop itself. Where's the line between authenticity, criminality, and survival? Hip-hop has always praised street credibility, but then turns around and condemns the same street life it glorifies. 6ix9ine's cooperation forced the entire genre to face that contradiction head-on. Whether his resilience is genuine or part of his performance, it's kept him alive, relevant, and loud in an industry that once tried to erase him completely. The real question now is, how long can that resilience last? His legal timeline shows a clear pattern that keeps escalating. From the massive 2018 federal case that could have ended his life behind bars, to a drastically reduced sentence thanks to his cooperation, to these smaller but repeated violations, each one just adds more time to the clock. A 45-day stint in 2024 became 3 months in 2026, and if history repeats itself, the next round could hit even harder. His journey also exposes the divide between celebrity justice and regular justice. Most cooperators in gang cases don't get the kind of protective custody 6ix9ine enjoys. They don't have superstar lawyers fighting for lighter sentences or release terms that let them make music and stay online. His fame gives him privileges that regular inmates could never dream of. But that same fame keeps a target on his back 24/7. Every move he makes is broadcast, picked apart, and judged. Even his live stream surrender that racked up millions of views came with a price. The whole world knows exactly where he is and how long he's staying there. And that's where his story sits today, between survival and spectacle, faith and fame, punishment and publicity. Love him or hate him, 6ix9ine has turned his entire life into a headline that never ends. If you made it this far, Hit that like, subscribe, comment, and share this video with someone who's been following the 6ix9ine saga, because this story is far from over.